Hi there, welcome back to the channel and thank you for joining me once again. Well, it's been a bit of a while since I did a video, to be honest, so I thought it was time I did another one. And as I've been quiet, some of you know, some of you don't know, that I've been actually doing some model building, so I've been using my time wisely, I hope so anyway. So I've been building this Tamiya Mk.1 Battle of Britain Spitfire, reference number 61119, and many of you will have seen the review that I did a couple of months ago where I was raving about it. I think it was back in November, 3 months ago. And I was saying that, you know, if you're a youngster or if you're an older modeller who's returning to the hobby and you're looking for something that's not going to be too stressful, and you want something that's going to fit perfectly and a masterful piece of engineering without the need for the most advanced skills, shall we say, this is the kit for you. Well, was it? I thought this would be interesting for people to watch simply because I don't usually do a video at the end of the build apart from just a photo montage, which you've probably seen already I've done. But in this case I thought it was very interesting because we've often had this discussion in the modelling world about doing inbox reviews, and there's some reviewers out there much better than me at it, I've got to be honest. I'm a relative beginner, but it only tells you a tiny amount of the story. Now, you've heard me complain before about Edouard. I'm not knocking Edouard as a manufacturer at all. They do some great stuff, to be honest. But they've also done one or two turkeys, and I won't bore you by going over old ground, but some of their kits don't go together as perfectly as you think. And you look at them in the box and they have the most beautiful finish, panel detail, rivets, everything is dead accurate. But sometimes one or two of theirs just don't go together very well. And I said in the past, recently, well, of course, Tamiya. There's none of that issue with Tamiya. And you'll recall that there was the Messerschmitt BF109 G6 that I built last year, which was a 2018 release. This kit actually is a 2019, so this is a later kit. But that BF109 G6 was a dream, quite frankly. I'd made that, and of course I also made the older 10-year-old Spitfire Mk.1 in 32nd scale, which lots of people have built and really changed the game in modelling. You know, what's that now, 12 years ago, incredible. 13 years ago, incredible. Anyway, I made that, and that was a peach, and it was everything you expect from Tamiya and sealed their reputation for years to come. So you would expect then that this new one, the 48 scale, following from the bigger scale and following the BF109 G6, would be absolutely knockout, and I said it was. I might have jumped the gun slightly, if I'm quite honest, because there are some issues with this kit. They're not massive, I'm not going to tell you it's a bad kit, because it isn't. It's a nice kit. Still probably one of the best Spitfires out there, although I haven't actually seen or reviewed the Edouard one, so I just make that proviso. Anyway, let's just get straight into what these issues are. And I'm going to start by sort of just taking a step back and looking back at the, you can see the model here which is finished. I'll zoom you in so you can see this. Let's have a closer look at this, and we'll look at the box, and some of the problems start right there actually. But this is the finished kit. Now mine is, if you may recall that I did a talk about the old Warlord magazine, well comic I should say, magazine's a bit of a flattering term, isn't it? There was a 1975 edition, which I'm sorry I'm just grabbing. It's just out of shot. It's hard to come out of its folder. Here it is, Warlord. And this was the very first edition in 1975 that included the my birthday, in fact, and it included the Phantom Flyer, this new comic strip they produced, which was all about a chap called Hoodoo Heart. Here we go. I'll just zoom you in a bit more. You know what I'm rambling on about. So basically it's a chap that's a top flyer, but he's had some sort of an injury, and he's been told he's not fit to fly. So long story short, what he does is he actually keeps his eye open. He's got a farm quite close to this RAF Spitfire fighter squadron, and what he does, and there it is at the bottom right in that image, you can see there. Basically what he does, he waits for one to get shot down that isn't very badly damaged at all, and he purloins this aircraft, and he makes sure that the pilot comes looking for it an hour or two later, and he gets a bit too close for comfort, and they actually drug him and then send him back to the base, and he's none the wiser. And so the guy basically obtains a Spitfire. So the D marking, this is why this aircraft's got no squadron markings on it or code numbers at all, because it's the Phantom Flyer. So I deliberately went for a worn, slightly weathered look, but the roundels are deliberately kept very clean because in the story it's the only thing that identifies him, so he has to make sure the others see him. And he pops up in the Battle of Britain and keeps saving other pilots in various encounters with the Luftwaffe over southern England. Anyway, it really captured my imagination when I was just 9 years old, so this is the one I based it on. So what we're going to do, we'll come back to the finished model in a minute, but let's just talk about the kit itself, because that's what other people who have bought the kit want to know about. So let's just zoom in a bit here. Now if you recall, it's 3 versions of the Mk.1, and they are the very early Stanford Tuck plane from 1939, pre-war, before it was actually in conflict. And then there's 2 other versions. There's the QV, which is the one that was Operation Dynamo, the evacuation air cover over the evacuation of Dunkirk. This is the one that was recently restored and now lives at Duxford. And the one at the front, which is the DWK, which is the number 610 County of Chester Squadron. This is quite from a famous photograph, although all the photographs are in black and white. So. Anyway, let's just have a look at this box very quickly, because we don't need to revisit the whole review, but there's 1 or 2 things that strike me, having built this now, that are problematic straight away. First thing is, it shows the photo etch. Here it is. Now, I'll zoom you in on this, and you'll see that we have a slight issue. Now then, here we go. So this is the photo etch after I have used it, and I don't know if you can notice anything that strikes you, is that I've used hardly any of it. And I found this very strange. Now there are different sort of seatbelt arrangements depending on whether you've got the pilot in or pilot out. And I chose to have the pilot in this time because I wanted to have Hoodoo Hart with his moustache. But you can see that it's got the later little covers, for example, for the wheels. So this is probably going to be a generic PE fret. But it struck me really that I used 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 out of 30. Okay, so that's less than 1/3 of the parts. It's got a bit bent because I actually trod on it by mistake, but it doesn't matter because I'd already used them. But that's very strange, you know. So, yeah, you get a few left at the end, of course, but they trumpeted it on the side and you're thinking, oh, that's great. And then you build it and find out you use hardly any of it, which is really odd. Now, similarly to that, there's a second issue. It's okay. It's shown on the box, and I think I've binned the original. So let's just look at this. Also, there was this moulding stickers that they refer to. Now, this is on the very Mk.1 that's over here. They had this like a bulged, like a riveted panel for some reason, and then they later integrated it into the main panels on the engine. But the other 3 things below, where my finger is here, these are 3, just a multiple of 3 in case you lose one or damage one. And what it is, it's a little hatch that the pilot can open on his canopy here. And it's a surround. That's a great idea. Well, it would be great. It would have been great if, and only if, Tamiya had made it the correct size. They made it totally oversized, which is really weird. So that I was going to use that, and I cut it out. I was very careful to remove it with tweezers so I didn't get any marks on it. And when I came to present it to the canopy, it was clearly the wrong size, and they're all the same size. Wrong. So that was another faux pas they'd made. Very strange. And again, most of this, I ended up using none of that, and only 30% of that. So that's a rather weird start. But it gets worse. Let me show you in the instructions. I mean, I normally get on Tamiya like a house on fire. You know, it's almost like they are my go-to manufacturer. But they made a few slip-ups here. So I'm just going to move my phone over there because my phone's got notes, so I don't forget any of these because I want to make sure I tell you all of them. Now you'll notice that on the top of the aircraft, I'm getting the model out here. Let me have a quick butchers. Let's have a little zoom in. Sorry about the slowness of the zoom. Look behind the aerial, just above where the roundel is on the side. Absolutely move the box away. There we are. Now you see the little Morse code light, I think it is, here. It's just behind. Right, so that goes in there. It's a clear part, that's fine. Here's the odd thing. When you're looking at these instructions, section 12, you can see that the 2 halves of the fuselage go together. And there is no mention of any need to drill a hole for that light to actually fit in, to plug in later. So of course you follow the instructions, and you don't jump ahead to the very last stage of the construction. You trust that Tamiya have got their instructions right. Then on the next page, suddenly, like by magic, a hole has appeared. And there's no mention of any hole to be drilled in the prior instructions. So that is a mistake. They've forgotten to tell you that here you need to drill a hole, or probably there. It's just not mentioned. It's really weird. So that's very un-Tamiya-like and a real faux pas. So obviously then what happens is, you're ambling along toward the end of the build and you come to put your light on and there's nowhere for it to go. It's got like a little plug lug that's supposed to go in a hole, and there's no hole. So anyway, what I did, none of these problems are insurmountable, but they're annoying, and it's not like them. So what you have to do with this one is you cut the lug off to make it just flush, and then I use PVA, and I got it in absolutely perfect in the end. But it was a pain, and it was just stupid. What were they thinking of? So that was another very strange thing they did. Now, at the other end of the spectrum, completely opposite problem, same problem, but in reverse. On the Mk.1 Spitfire, the pre-war with the Mk.1 gun sight, which is the squarer gun sight, I'm not sure if you're going to see this, but I have to bring you right in for this one. Look on the cowling ahead of the canopy. You can just about make out, there it is, you can see the little thing sticking up just on the top of the cowling in front of the canopy there, about a centimetre or so. Excuse me. That is actually the front bead of the gun sight system for the Mk.1 gun sight. However, there's a hole. This is the opposite of what we've just spoken about, because in this case there's a hole already drilled for it, but only one of the 3 versions uses that hole, and it doesn't tell you anywhere that you need to fill this hole in. So you do the construction, you do your paint job, and then you suddenly find you've got a hole, and if you choose not to have the Mk.1 gun sight, which other people probably won't, you've probably got a hole to fill in, then you've got to start, and again it's just stupid. So they've got holes that are not needed, only in one version, and all 3 versions that need a hole for that light have no hole, and no mention of drilling one either. Very odd, very odd. Again, it's not a complete showstopper, but this is not like Tamiya. We didn't have this in the BF109, we certainly didn't have it in the big Spitfire. It was flawless, so I don't know what's gone on. There's more. Sound like a rant now, but it's not a rant. I just thought it was very odd, and it struck me as not being a step forward. Now the worst one, well, the worst 2. I won't point it out too much because I don't think you'll see it actually on the camera, but the actual wing join wasn't a very good join. It wasn't like the BF109, which was perfection. This was strange, and it left a bit of a seam, but nothing compared to the one on the nose. Now then, I'm sure you'll probably make this out if I point it out to you. Let's just have a look at this. So in this construction, I'll show the instructions first because then you know exactly what you're looking at. What they did, for reasons that are completely beyond me, and I'm sure other people are going to be just as baffled, they decided, Tamiya, to have the nose cowling here with this cutout at the front, which has got no relation to the real cowling, which is all one piece. And you see it on the other marks and on the Mk.1s, but obviously the other model of Spitfire, the 32nd, has it as one piece, and they have all the little magnets to hold it on. Nothing like that here. It's almost like they were thinking about doing what they did with the BF109 G6 and putting magnets on, which would have been great. But there's no magnets. There's no reason for it whatsoever, and you end up with, actually, it's not that great a fit. It's not actually quite the right shape. I think they've actually made it a little bit tight, and it becomes very noticeable. So once you put it in, it shows it all smooth, like, which is what you expected it to be. When I first looked at the instructions and I saw that and I looked at the parts, you notice it straight away. Anybody that's built a Spitfire before thinks, well, it's a bit weird. But you think, I put my faith in Tamiya, it'll be absolutely fine. Well, no. And when I look in the book, there's been other people who've made this kit, and it's very obvious. It's really hard to get rid of this joint. Now, I've done a reasonably good job. I'm not the best modeller in the world. I'm not trying to pretend I am. Never will be. But I've done a decent job of it. And but there's been a lot of sanding and finishing and filling to get this to look as good as it does. I mean, it's not that obvious. Now I've shown it you, you'll spot it. But if I hadn't shown it you, you probably wouldn't have done. Can you see it? There's a line across. Now there should be nothing there. That should be all one piece. It's baffling that they did this. Now on this side, actually, you don't see it quite as badly. Let's move the prop down a bit. There we go. There we go. Got spinning prop anyway. But they just created it, and on this is the side. It's a little bit tight, and it just wasn't quite right, the shape. And you know, it went in okay, but it just wasn't the right shape. So you have to fill it, and I had to file it, and just generally faff around with it, which was quite annoying, to be honest. Now you have to bear in mind that this aircraft kit, unlike the BF109 G6 I mentioned, that they really kind of over-engineered that one. That's not a complaint. They put these beautiful cowls that are removable, and you put standard cowl on with magnets, or have the open cowl like a gull wing. Brilliant what they did with this. This is only £5 cheaper, and yet they did nothing with it. There's no engine in this, there's no nothing. And to be honest, it feels a bit overpriced. I think, what was it, £32? I think it's probably not really worth that, to be honest. But that was a real pain, and any modeller that makes this is going to have issues with that. I'm going to be messing around with it, I can tell you that for nothing. Let me just tell you the others, because there's still a couple more that are quite amusing to people. I think these are... You're going to be shaking your head thinking, really? Yeah, really. Yeah. So, let me just look at the list here. Oh yes, two more things. Decals. We had issues with decals. Tamiya's decals are very, very thick. They always are, to be fair. So I'm going to pop this here. I'm just going to zoom you right in full there. Now then, one thing that they got wrong as well, a combination of decal and moulding. They over-emphasised, you can see it there actually, which is giving the decal absolute hell despite the amount of treatments I've given it. Can you see that it's actually the pivot, the hinges for the radio and first aid hatch, and it's completely overdone. It just protrudes more than is, I'm sure it's more than scale like, because I've never seen one that protruded that much on a 48 scale before. So they've kind of got that a little bit wrong, and the rest of the shape on the kit is wonderful, to be honest. It looks dead on, I think. But they've kind of got that so extraordinarily emphasised and exaggerated, it ain't right. Now these decals have been, oh, they've had everything. I've been... I was even on the Flory chat the other day asking Phil Flory, and he was recommending to go extreme and start using X28, which is fair enough, but it was kind of too late. I'd already hammered it, and I was starting to melt and crack the decals because they are so thick. So I would just say to you, I'm quite pleased in this case I don't have the squadron decals down the side, so there's no issue with those. But most of you won't do that. You'll have it as an authentic aircraft from the Battle of Britain. This is kind of a fantasy one in a way, but it's a nightmare. They really are difficult, you know. Now I did have some problems with them, granted, on the 32nd scale, but I got round it by perseverance. But it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy. I'm getting to the point that I'm thinking that I'm not knocking Tamiya at all, because I love them. I'm the biggest fan they've got in the world, to be honest. Certainly one of them. But I'm not really keen on using their decals a lot in the future. I think I'm going to get aftermarket, which is a bit of a pain, really, and it shouldn't be necessary. Talking of decals, the other thing they do, of course, they've got a mask set for the canopy, which is very accurate, but you have to cut it out yourself. I know a lot of other people grumble about this, rightly. You shouldn't have to cut them out yourself. Why can't they just cut them? You know, it's not a big deal for a manufacturer to do that. We've got, you know, others are doing it, like Edouard, no problem. So that was a bit silly as well. Anyway, I'm coming down my list. Oh yes, and here's another one that's interesting. We'll just zoom you back in. Now this is another strange thing which is also mentioned on the box, so we'll refer back to the box for a second. Now, they've got this system, if you want to have your canopy open, like I've done here, they have this, I've actually not glued my sliding bubble on there, so I'm going to remove it so you can see what I'm talking about. Now can you see the way it steps in? They've got this two different options depending on whether you're open or closed. You have a completely different section of the fuselage, and they show it here on the box. Now the way they've taken the photograph, you can't really see it as well, but what you'll find when you actually build the model is you'll start to think, as I did, well, why have they done that? Because it means you can't have the canopy sort of as if he's just sliding it. You know, you can't have it like that, Because if you do, as I'm sure you can see on the video now, you can see that there's this step they've created, which wasn't necessary. Why did they need to make it step in? Perhaps it's because they didn't feel they could get the canopy thin enough to look realistic. But you're then forced into having it back, because otherwise it looks a bit ridiculous, quite frankly. Because it's got this step in the bodywork that doesn't exist on the real aircraft. So that's very odd. I don't like what they've done there. I think, I didn't realise this when I did the review. I thought, oh, well, you know, this will be beautifully engineered and very, very clever. Well, actually, it isn't very clever, and it's not that beautifully engineered. There's one or two issues with that as well. Anyway, there we go. Was there anything else that I needed to mention to you? Yes, I think there was. Oh yes, stencils. Now then, the stencils in the instructions, half of them are missing. It doesn't mention half of them. The one for the radio hatch isn't mentioned. It doesn't mention anything about the port wing. And it says, see separate sheet. There was no separate sheet for the underside of the other wing. So I don't know what that was all about, whether it's an export version. Quite a lot of the stencils are just not mentioned. You can see the proof here. There's no mention there about that radio hatch. And you look at it and you think, I'm sure Spits have more stencils than this. Yes, there's quite a few of them in here, but quite a few of them seem to be missing as well. So I don't know. I just didn't understand it. That's a classic example. I've only just found that today and realised that the ballast first aid notification thing, that's missing, and it's not mentioned in those instructions anywhere. So that's really weird to me. I don't understand it. I don't understand it. And I think that's it. I think that's 10 items I actually mentioned. Stencil instructions. Yep, that's it. Okay. So there are 10 items there that disappointed me, if I'm quite honest. So you maybe want to check out the Edward. I'm not recommending Edward because I don't know the kit, but I'm not as enamoured with this kit as I was with the BF109G6 or the big Spitfire that they produced, which was absolutely fabulous. It's a lovely model now. I've finished it. Well, I think it's good enough for me anyway. It is a nice kit, but there are some issues, and Tamiya, you need to pay more attention. This is not like you at all. Basic mistakes with instructions where there's no stencils or the instructions are wrong. I've never seen that before that I can remember, ever. But anyway, I'm not going to rant on about it. It was a nice build. It does now look a nice Spit, and yeah, I think that I think I'm going to revise my original review. I said 9.5 7 out of 10. Okay, I think that the proof of the pudding of these kits is when you've actually built it and then you really have a feel for what they're like and what they're, you know, how good they are. So there we are. Anyway, I thought I'd share that with you. Sorry if it sounded like a rant. I'm not going to go at Tamiya. I love them. Please, I hope they're not going to start making silly mistakes like that. That was 10 items. That I could find 10 is astonishing, really. I usually can't find one. So, we shall see. But there we go. So that's the Mk.1 Spitfire from Tamiya, from Battle of Britain. It's reference number 61119, 7 out of 10. A little bit disappointed, if I'm honest, but we'll see what they come up with next. I mean, we know that the Tomcat is far superior to this. Everybody says it is, and the Lightning is superior as well. So I don't know why they had this sudden slip. Let's hope that their next, the new Phantom that's coming out, or any of their other new kits, is going to be better in the future. Anyway, thanks for watching. Please give us a like and a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. I thought it was interesting. If you haven't joined already, please subscribe and tick the notification bell. Make sure that you get notifications of any more videos that I produce. And thanks for joining me. I hope you thought it was interesting, and I hope to see you again in the near future. In the meantime, thanks a lot. Bye for now.